Hey, besties and bosses. All right, I think this is working. Sorry that this is a take two, y'all, I know there was someone who had just hopped on when I went live before. Welcome. I don't know, Facebook does this thing once in a while. I don't know if anyone else does this when you go live on your phone. Did exactly the same thing, but sometimes it wants me to rotate my phone, sometimes it doesn't, and it wasn't allowing us to, I don't think it was, I couldn't see what was going on, allowing us to transmit or go live properly. So looks like it's working now. It's only a couple minutes late. I don't think we're too late, are we? We're 7 minutes late. So sorry about that, y'all. If you were here waiting, I like to be on time, but we were having a couple tech things. But here we are. We're going to dive into our conversation. Hopefully, y'all will hop back on. And if you're watching on the replay, you'll be able to catch everything, obviously, fully there. But happy Tuesday. How is everyone? How's everyone's week? I think I posted this. Yeah, I did post this on Instagram. I had such a good weekend. New York City, it's been open and we've been like, the world has been opening back up, but things have just been feeling a little bit more okay to go interact and go do. And my husband and I went to go see a play this weekend on Broadway. We went to go see Six and we went out to dinner beforehand, and I went out with a friend yesterday to a spot I've been wanting to try in the city, and it just feels, we're still being very careful, wearing masks when we need to, obviously doing social distancing, but it just feels so good to be out and about and to feel like the world is a little more open. I had a client of mine in town that I got to meet in person and hug in person and go to brunch with. So just, I feel like all of the things that you almost forget after 2 years. And I don't know how it is for all of you, wherever you live. I know New York City in particular, I don't know, it's such a city that's meant to be lived and to get to be around art and new restaurants and new experiences. That's one of the reasons I moved here. So it's just I feel like I'm riding this high of people, getting to see a client, which is literally one of my favorite things ever, getting to be around art again. This is not what today's conversation is about, but man, I just forgot how important it is to get to have some of those things that really fill us up. So I am riding high on that today, and I'm excited to chat with y'all, and we'd just love to know how all of you are. Today we're going to talk about sales objections, but not the way I think we usually talk about them. We're going to talk about 2 reasons sales objections might be keeping you stuck. I should also pull up the Facebook group over here and make sure I think we are live properly. So I know sales objections are one of those things most people have heard about. You've probably learned a lot about. We've talked about that quite a bit in the group before. Yeah, okay, this is working properly. Just wanted to check that since we did have some tech things. And I think sales objections are a really interesting thing. It's something I'm supporting so many clients with. And what I find is they can feel so sticky and so yucky and have so much come up around them that I find so often clients would rather like have a new offer or come up with a new ideal client or restructure their whole business and have a new business model instead of having to deal with sales objections. Hey, Marie, nice to have you here. Nice to have you live. Oh, and you are reminding me, the tech snafu got me totally off gear here. If you're live, if you watch on the replay, say hi, leave me an emoji. We are giving away, in honor of talking sales and objections today, we're going to give away 1 copy of my self-study sales course, Sell Out Without Feeling Like a Sellout. It used to be free. We now charge for it. There's now a rate associated with it. So we will give away 1 copy. We'll pick winners on Thursday. So now on the replay, say hi, leave me an emoji. That's all you got to do. If you already have it and you don't want it, you can pass it on to someone else. I just want to thank you all for being here and give someone that extra resource because I think it's a pretty darn good course. Okay, so enough prefacing. I've been like chatty Kathy today, and we haven't been diving into the topic yet, so let's dive in. So I find with objections, you'll have to let me know how you feel objections. Who here is like, oh my gosh, I love when people have objections, and who is like, ugh, objections, just like, if I could never have to deal with an objection in my life, I would be so happy. Like, ugh, I hate them. I don't like them. They make me feel icky. I mean, you can tell me how you feel about them. I know for my clients, it really is one of those things that either like the internal icks can come up, and you have like that visceral reaction, or they can feel like that's making them do something wrong, or it's pushy and manipulative to navigate, or they don't know how to navigate them. But I know so often a client will come to me and say, hey, I think my business is wrong. Maybe I need to change my offer because people are saying they can't afford it, or maybe I need a new ideal client because I keep having people who say they can't afford it. I need to just have clients who can afford this. And today we're going to talk about why that isn't I would say the right problem to solve, as my coach would say, and what we want to look at instead. And I'm going to talk about, instead of how to navigate objections today, that's in the sales course that we can do on another live stream. I want to talk about 2 reasons those sales objections might feel really sticky for you, because if you can kind of get unsticky there, it's going to feel a lot better navigating those. So again, let me know how you feel about sales objections, what your thoughts are on those. Before we dive into, I'm just pulling up my notes here, before we dive into those 2 reasons there, let's chat a little bit and normalize objections first when it comes to a sales conversation. So something I like to remind my clients, that I will remind you, sales objections are, like, I really like to see them as a very neutral thing and just a normal part of a sales conversation and a sales process. I think they can feel, and this isn't one of the 2 reasons, but I think they can feel particularly sticky when we start to see them as something that's wrong or bad, or we're like, oh my gosh, why is this happening? This means there's a problem, as opposed to just, not that we're like expecting them, but just as a super normal part of sales. I like to remind clients, particularly if you have a product or a service that's high ticket, that's a higher price point, or that is working through something that is maybe more vulnerable, or that's a longer time commitment, or that's having someone go overcome a big transformation, or have to go through, like, let's say you have a fitness program where it's like, it's going to be a lot of work for someone to like show up, maybe get up, like have to move, to literally have to sweat. If you have anything that requires any sort of effort for a human to say yes to your offer, we have to think, us humans hate pain. We like to avoid it. We like to stay in our comfort zone, and we really are pretty crummy at making decisions, especially if that decision is going to ask us to part with our resources like money, or that's going to ask us to do something that's uncertain, like, make a big investment where we don't know what the outcome's going to be like, or to do anything that's going to make us feel uncomfortable. So I think the more we can normalize that, of course, if you're selling anything that's asking someone to part with a resource or get uncomfortable or have to make a commitment where they can't have control or they don't know what's on the other side for sure, of course, the human brain on the other side is going to possibly have some objections that come up. And so I think the more you can see, that's really why objections come up. And that's just so normal. That doesn't mean you have the wrong audience, you have the wrong ideal clients, you have the wrong offer, you have the wrong niche, you have the wrong business model. Instead, if you can start to see this, oh, I'm a human serving other humans, this is a super normal part of the sales process, I think that can make it a lot easier to even want to be open to hearing objections and to navigating them and just to getting curious as to what's going on. Does that make sense? Curious if you all have any thoughts or if that doesn't make sense. But I think before we dive in again, just to normalize, objections are super neutral, they're super normal, and that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you, your offer, or any of those other things there. In fact, and this is kind of what we were talking about at the beginning of the conversation, I really want to invite you to be mindful of when there are objections coming up, how quickly you want to jump to, there must be something else wrong in my business. And to notice how easily the brain wants to do that, because that's often when we are looking to solve the wrong problem, so to say, in business, as opposed to what's really going on, which is how can we get really great at supporting humans through discomfort, through their human objections, to be able to make a decision they want, whatever that might be as it comes to your offer. If you've ever hung out with me, if we've ever talked about sales before, I'm so big on seeing sales as really all about, if we're approaching sales from a heart-centered and service-based place, all about really helping the person in front of us get clear on what it is they want. Do they want your offer, yes or no? And then helping them to make a clear decision to move towards that. And so if we can think about that and remember that, when an objection is coming up, we can see, oh, that's just a normal part of this process here. My job is to help them get clear on what's going on with that objection so they can make that clear decision. That does not mean there is a problem somewhere else in my business, okay? Hopefully that makes sense. If you have a question, let me know. But let's talk about those 2 reasons objections might be keeping you stuck and what can be coming up, and I think why they can feel particularly hard and navigating, or sticky to navigate. So the first thing I find comes up for clients a lot, and I think this can be like the biggest roadblock with objections, is when you believe someone's objection is true. And I think there can be more than 2 reasons, but I think there can be 2 main reasons for this. So if someone has an objection to your offer, when you're in that sales conversation and you think that's true, I think that can be very sticky and keep you really stuck in navigating that conversation, because of course, if you're buying what someone is telling you, it's going to feel manipulative or gross or yucky or sleazy or slimy or icky or infill whatever adjective there to then try to have a conversation around it. It's going to feel like you're trying to convince someone of something that doesn't feel in integrity for you. So the first thing I always want to look at with clients is, are they really buying someone's objection as truth? And I think two ways we can look at this. One, are they maybe buying this objection as truth? And you can just play with this yourself. Like, just think through, what's the most common sales objection you get? The most common objection you get to your offer? Is it that someone can't afford it, that it's too expensive? Is it maybe that the timing is wrong, or that they don't have enough time? Is it maybe that they're not ready yet? Just get I think it can be really, really helpful. And if you don't know what that is, that's really great information, because that may be your first step in your sales process and seeing how you can increase your conversions, is to get clear on, what is the most common objection for my people? Because if we don't know what that is, it's really hard to know how to speak to that, or to navigate that, or to even know what we want to speak to into your content before someone gets to your sales page or in a sales conversation with you. Whatever that common objection is, I'd invite you to ask yourself, are you, when you hear that objection, are you buying that as truth? And if so, is it, first and foremost, is it because you think that's true about your offer, because you're not bought into your offer in that way? So for example, if, let's say, the most common objection you hear is, it's too expensive, I can't afford it. When you hear that from someone, are you thinking, oh my gosh, yeah, that's totally true? Because you haven't gotten clear on the value of your offer, because you haven't overcome that objection for yourself with your offer. If so, that might be why you're feeling really stuck having those conversations. You might not even notice people are having objections because they feel like truth to you, right? Similarly, if let's say you always hear someone says, I don't have enough time for this. And you're like, well, actually, I think you probably don't. Like, this is a really time consuming thing. I don't even know if it's worth the time to do this. Obviously, you wouldn't consciously be saying this, but it's really interesting to notice what our brain does subconsciously. Notice if you're essentially having the same objection to your own offer that you're hearing from other people, or other people essentially mirroring to you what you believe to be true. And you're kind of like hoping, I find what sometimes happens is when we have an objection to our own offer and we're not fully bought into, we're not fully sold ourselves on our offer and some of these elements, oftentimes we're selling and we're kind of hoping our audience or hoping our people will sell us, that they'll convince us that, if someone buys at a price point that maybe we think is like, I don't know, maybe this is too expensive, we're kind of hoping that if someone buys, that that'll convince us that that price point is correct. Or if we think that maybe the offer, people aren't ready, or that there isn't enough time, and that's something we think is really true, sometimes we'll be really hoping that our people will do the selling for us and convince us of something that we really need to spend some time doing the work on first. So that would be the first place I would invite you to just notice, are you clear on what those objections are? And are those objections you haven't really overcome yourself in your own business? And if not, is that something that maybe you need to first spend some time overcoming, instead of hoping that a potential client, a client can overcome that for you? I think particularly with the money investment piece, really check in there. Are you sort of like, I'm not sure about my rates? Am I really hoping someone will invest and buy, and that's going to convince me? If that's the case, there's nothing wrong, no shame in that. I think that's a very, very normal, common thing, especially if you've just increased your rates recently or something like that. But then just notice your work there is probably going to be first to see, can you overcome that objection with yourself? Can you navigate that objection with yourself, with your own offer? That's going to make it so much easier to navigate that with someone else. And what I find happens so often is we often have our own insecurities, our own objections reflected to us, mirrored to us. So the longer you're really hoping someone else can convince you and give you kind of the confidence you're wanting in your own price point or something else in your offer, the longer that's going to be reflected to you that is not where you're at. When you start to shift that and overcome that for yourself, you'll start to notice, it's really, really fascinating how the people you're either booking calls with, or the people who are going to your landing page, maybe you're in a launch model, how fewer of those objections you're hearing, because you're really going to start to have people mirroring back to you what you believe to be true. you, because that's also what you're going to reflect out in your content, in your marketing, in your sales conversations, on your sales pages, and your sales emails. Let me know if you're picking up what I'm putting down there, because I think that can be a really, really big shift that we aren't always aware of. And I think this can make it so beautiful, because when you can make this shift and overcome that objection for yourself, it does so much of the heavy lifting for you. And you're suddenly like, wait, I don't even have to have this conversation as much with people, because I'm no longer portraying this objection in my marketing material on the front end. I'm no longer having this mirrored back to me. So hopefully that makes sense. But again, if you have questions, so happy to explain that more, and always happy to give more examples or walk you through anything there, because I want this to be super valuable for you. So that's on the first side there, where you might have that objection yourself with your offer, and maybe you're just either having that mirrored back to you, or you're just kind of hoping that people will overcome that so that they can convince you really of what you need to know to be true to be able to sell that. I always like to say we have to be more confident than the people we're selling to in our offers, and that includes with what some of those objections might be. So this might be a place where you're not fully confident on the other side of that objection. You're kind of hoping that from your audience. The other place I just need a sip of water. The other place I see this same place, people really get stuck with objections, is it's kind of the other side to this same stuck point, is when the objection you're constantly hearing from your audience, from potential clients, from people who are maybe going through your launch and the reason they're not buying, when that's an objection you have as well for other offers. And again, you haven't been able to overcome that yourself, and you're sort of like, well, yeah, that's the way I buy as well. When someone else's objection is, it's essentially your same objection, maybe not with your own offer, but with other offers, and it really mimics your buying style, your buying personality. I believe we all have different buying styles and different buying personalities. It's really fascinating to notice what is your buying style, and it can change depending on what kind of thing you're investing in. And so I'll use myself as an example here. I sell a high ticket one-on-one coaching offer. When I was first selling one-on-one, I know before I had invested in a high level coach, I know it was a lot harder for me to have a conversation with someone around an objection or around a concern or around a fear about making a high level investment in one-on-one coaching. When someone had a concern or worry about that, it was a lot stickier for me, because the truth was I had the same objection in investing in the same thing and wasn't willing to make the same leap myself in one-on-one. And while I might have been investing in one-on-one coaching, it really wasn't until I overcame that fear, I overcame a lot of what was underneath that objection for myself by investing in a high level one-on-one coach, a high ticket one-on-one coach, literally investing in something I couldn't afford at the time and didn't have the money for at the time, and kind of working through that I noticed I got way less of those objections reflected and mirrored back to me, but also the easier it was for me to navigate and have that conversation with someone, because I had gone through working through that myself by being on the client buying investing side. Something that feels really, really important to say here, because I think this is a concept a lot of times we hear in the online space, where it's like, don't expect someone to invest in your offer if you're not willing to do the same. And I want to be really mindful. That is not what I'm saying here. I do not believe that you have to spend the same money, do the same thing, invest in the same thing you're selling to have someone invest in your offer. I think that is almost, I don't think that's the intention people have when they teach that, but I think sometimes that can almost feel a little like pyramid schemey or something, where it's like, I don't know, it feels like a form of marketing where people are saying that sometimes, I think, as a hopes, where it's like, this is why you should invest in my offer so that you can then go sell something else. That's not what we're talking about here at all. You do not need to, I have plenty of clients, for example, who what they're selling is literally something they don't need to invest in. So it would not make sense for them to go invest at the price point they have to have someone else to do the service they provide, just so they could overcome that objection and prove to themselves they're willing to invest in something. That is just not what we're talking about here at all. So I want to be very, very mindful that you're picking up what I'm putting down. What I am saying is, if you have, let's say the money one is just such a common objection. If the objection of, I can't afford this, that's too expensive, I don't have the money for it right now, so I can't afford it. And if part of helping someone through this is helping them see maybe how they could be resourceful if this is something they really want, and how, maybe this is something they might have other resources they want to tap into to be able to make this investment for themselves if they really want to. If that's something that you just have on the client buying side never believed yourself, whether or not you actually do that, or whether or not you actually need to do that, if that's just something you're not willing to believe in yourself, you just don't believe is true when you're on the client buying side yourself, it's going to be a lot more challenging to have that conversation with someone else. So I always think of the word willing here as really key. Are you willing, if you're in the client buying side, would you be willing to invest at the same price point you're selling? Would you be willing to ask to do what you're asking potential clients to do if that was something that really served you or met your needs? Would you be willing to step into some of the discomfort you're asking potential clients to when they're on the potential client side? That's the piece we want to look at. If you would be willing to, it's a lot easier to have that conversation. If you look at that and you're like, oh, well, honestly, I would not be willing to, or like, that's something I need to look at. That would feel so uncomfortable to me. That would feel like such a hell no to me. I think that's where we can get really stuck having those conversations. So hopefully that makes sense, but I want to be, again, really clear here. I'm not saying, we're not like doing weird pyramid scheme stuff here where it's like, for you to be able to overcome objections and to navigate, I don't even like the term overcome, navigate objections, be able to have those conversations with people, right? We're not trying to manipulate or convince people of anything. You do not have to go invest in the same thing at the same level in the same way. It is not like if you do that allows you to make more money or to sell more money. That is not at all what we're saying. However, what we do again want to look at is, would you be willing to? Or does some stuff get kicked up for you? And if some stuff gets kicked up for you, that's probably your own personal objection that's worth looking at and unpacking. Because if you can unpack that own personal objection you have around being willing to, again, that doesn't mean you have to, that doesn't even mean that would be the right next step for you, but if you can unpack what's coming up there for you, that's going to be so valuable, because it's really, really challenging to walk someone else through a conversation around something you're having your own stickiness around something you're feeling, discomfort or resistance around. So what I would invite you to play with there is just to notice, do you have your own objection? Do you have that resistance come up for you? Whether that is with your own offer, if someone says that, or you like, oh, well, actually that's kind of true. I was sort of hoping you would sell me on my offer so that I could be really convinced and overcome this objection I have with my own offer, with my own business, with my own work. Or do you have that same objection and that resistance come up when you think about being on the client buying side for something similar? And if so, no shame, nothing bad. I think all of us go through this. I know I definitely have gone through variations of this, but if so, I think that's such an opportunity to look at how can you navigate that, how can you move through and unpack that resistance for yourself first, because the more you can do that and give that to yourself, the more it's going to be so much easier to navigate that conversation with someone else. Because I think when we have those objections ourselves, what happens then when someone presents you with an objection is either you're just going to hear that as true and co-sign that for someone and be like, oh yeah, you're totally right. Or you're just going to get kind of stuck and feel like that is, I think, when it can feel super sticky and slimy, again, because you think it's true. And so that would be, I would say, the first place I would play with and just see, is that coming up for you? That might be why objections kind of get you, like that's the place in your sales process you might feel like you get stuck. And I think what's really beautiful here, if we look at both of those are things that whether or not you're having sales conversations or writing a sales page or currently launching, those are things you can work through to support your sales process, because it really comes back to you and your own mindset and what's going on with you and your own resistance. And it's just, I think it's just so fascinating and so cool to see. The more we do that work and move through our own resistance and move through our own stuck points and move through what's coming up for us, the easier it is to navigate that. And to see that play out in our business, and to see that play out in our sales process, and to see that play out in the clients we book and the money we make. But again, I think what's nice here is like, you don't even have to go necessarily convince someone of something or have a sales script to navigate this with someone else. The beautiful thing is you can just sit down with your journal and do this one-on-one with yourself. And that is going to support you for, I promise you, the rest of the time you are in business selling. Okay, so the other, again, let me know if you have questions. The other one here is, this one is so fascinating. I think this might have been a big one for, quite honestly, for me, definitely my first year in business. But I think the other reason objections can feel, I mean, there's obviously more than these two reasons, but the two most common that I notice a lot with clients, that objections can really have you feel stuck and feel like, oh, I don't even want to deal with them. Like, let me just go like create a whole new business with all new ideal clients instead of having to try to deal with this. If you are someone who feels like you have a really hard time speaking for what you want or what you don't want, if you feel like when you're on the potential buying side, you feel like you don't feel empowered to say, yes, I want this, no, I don't want this, or you've had some really unfortunate like sales situations where the person selling to you maybe didn't sell in a way that felt really good and of service, and that didn't really put you in that empowered place to make that decision, where it felt like maybe you were being a little more convinced or you didn't really have that space to make your own decision. I find this can be a place where navigating, when you hear objections, you can feel really stuck, because what I find happens is when someone has that objection and whenever they say something, it's very easy then to jump to what you would do if you were in that position, why you would say something like that, and to think, oh, it's not even really about what they're saying. It's because they don't know how to tell me they don't want this. And to hear an objection as a no for that reason. Let me explain this in a better way, because I don't know if that was exactly clear. It's sort of like, we'll use like personal relationships and like dating, for example. If you're someone who every time like your friends ask you to go to a certain restaurant or to go out or to go do something, and when you don't want to, you have an objection, right? Like, but when you like actually don't want to, instead of just clearly saying, hey, this isn't for me, like I would rather stay in tonight, or actually I don't like that restaurant, or I'm tired and it would just feel better for me to go take a nap and to stay in tonight. If you don't feel like you're empowered and you can just be transparent in that way, and instead you feel like you have to kind of make up excuses so you don't hurt people's feelings, or so you can people please, or so that your friends will like you, and so you're sort of like, well, I mean, that sounds like such a great idea, but like and then you make up a lie, right? Like, but I have this other thing I have to do, when really it's that you just want to stay home and take a nap, or let me see if I can get back to you, and you like conveniently forget to respond to your friend, or you're like, you pretend that you have a migraine and you don't, right? I'm sure everyone knows what I'm talking about, or knows someone who can be like that. If you feel like that is kind of how you behave, like it's not just okay to say, I don't want to do this, this isn't for me. And you feel like you either have to yes people or make up an excuse so that you can be liked or accepted or not hurt someone's feelings, right? I think there can be a lot of reasons to unpack there. It might have not been the best example, but hopefully that's clear there. I think if that is the case, objections can feel really sticky in your business, if we bring this back to your business and your sales process, because whenever we have a hard time doing something, we start to think that's the case for everyone else, right? When we're not being transparent, when we don't feel like it's safe and okay, I don't think anyone makes up excuses and lies because they're trying to be mean. I don't think anyone in this group, like this is a pretty heart-centered group, right? I think when we're doing that and we're having a hard time articulating boundaries, or we're people-pleasing, or we're making excuses and we can't speak our truth, there's often a lot of layers under that, right? And if that's the case for you and you're having sales conversations and someone gives you an excuse, or someone gives you an objection, or someone says a reason maybe why they're not ready, what can happen then is, if this is also if your pattern is to not speak your truth, yes, I want this, no, I don't want this, it can be very easy to project that onto the person you're having conversation with, and to think, well, they must also be like not able to tell me this isn't the thing they want. And so when they're saying they can't afford this, or when they're saying maybe they're really busy, or when they're saying, I actually really want to do this, but I don't know if I'm ready yet, or I actually really want to invest in this, but like I'm really scared because it's really expensive, or I need to go talk to my husband. It's then very easy for your brain to think, oh, they just don't know how to tell me they don't want this, this is a no, right? And to actually hear something very different than what is being told to you. And so if this is kind of like the other thing I find happen a lot for clients. If that's the case for you, again, everything here, like this is one of those things where it's like, we are all human. We all have so much history and there's so many layers. This is why I focus so much on not just strategy and action, but also the clarity and mindset, right? We have to get clarity on things. We have to get clarity on so many things in business, but also the mindset underneath it. There can be so many, things underneath this, and this could really have something to do with holding boundaries or with some trauma with a lowercase t or capital T. There can be so many reasons underneath this. So this isn't a place to give yourself a hard time. This isn't a place to make yourself wrong. This is a place to have some awareness and say, oh my goodness, maybe it's not that I like suck at navigating objections, or I suck at sales, or like people don't want to buy my work. Maybe it's that when people are giving me the very, very normal objections that can come up in a very normal like sales conversation, I'm hearing something different than what is actually being said. I'm projecting how I would behave. I'm projecting maybe my challenge with speaking up, speaking my truth. Because of that, onto this conversation, because of that, I'm hearing something different than what is being said. My work here is, yes, look at what's going on there, but also to see, can I start to practice hearing what's actually being said in a sales conversation, hearing what is actually being said to me by a potential client, because that is going to, always in a sales conversation or on your sales page, right? Like, so this could be in the DMs, or this could be if you have a sales funnel, if you're doing a launch, right? This might not be in a one-on-one call, but the more we can listen to what people are actually telling us, and kind of the words under the words as well, and what the person in front of you is expressing, and what the person in front of you needs support around to be able to make a decision, as opposed to our own personal narrative and what's coming up for us and our story. When we can separate those things out and really just focus all of the attention on the person in front of us, that's where the sales magic happens. That's when navigating objections becomes so much easier, because it's so much more about just having a conversation and supporting someone, instead of all of the stickiness that can come up when we're almost like playing, it's like walking on like broken eggshells, or like we're trying to navigate something because we're also navigating what's coming up for us, our own triggers around a conversation. I think what can be really helpful here, if you're sort of like, okay, this is kind of making sense, and if this isn't making sense, let me know, ask me questions. Now we're on the replay. But I think what can be really helpful to play with is just to notice and start to get in tune with your own nervous system, and just to see, like, how does your nervous system feel when maybe you feel a little activated, or when you do feel like something is maybe a little bit triggering for you. And triggering doesn't have to be necessarily a trauma response here, but just activating, like it kicks up your nerves, or it makes you gets you in your head and thinking about like what you would be doing. See if you can start to notice that even outside of sales conversations, but also in sales conversations, or like when you kind of like have that out of body experience and you realize, wait, I'm no longer listening to the person in front of me. I'm kind of like up in my head. I think those are great places just to be able to pause and notice, oh, this probably has more to do with my stuff. This isn't negative. This is just like, oh, isn't that interesting? My job here is to see, can I take this and just put it to the side for a moment and kind of get to neutral and focus back on the person in front of me and see what are they actually saying, especially when you're having a sales conversation and there's something coming up around objections. Because I think that can be a place where, I just hear this from clients a lot, where it can feel like it almost puts you on the defensive, right? When someone says something or they have a question even, and it can feel, if you're in that space where, because of what we're talking about here, where like it's hitting on something where you're like, oh, well, I have a hard time speaking up, or I have a hard time articulating what I need, or I have a hard time holding that boundary or saying no when I don't want something. So this is how I would respond. I think that can very much put us unintentionally, subconsciously on the defensive, right? Where we want to get very reactive. And I think what's helpful to remember is so often the person on the other side is like actually hoping that you're a fit. And a lot of times what's coming up has nothing to do with you and everything to do with just their own discomfort or what's coming up for them around making that decision. And so the more you can kind of get out of that defensiveness and more into, how can I just be open and support someone? How can I be neutral and support someone? The more it's easier to actually have that conversation. All right, to let me know. Do we feel like I have one more? We said two, but I have one more bonus reason here. It's coming up as I'm sharing this. So we're just going to share it because why not? I think this will be helpful. But as I'm sharing this, the other reason that I think objections can have you feel stuck and that can almost feel like, oh, I don't know how to move from here, and even to like have this conversation with someone is what I was starting to touch on just here, is when it feels like an objection or a question from someone is kind of an attack on you, or it's someone questioning you in your work. This came up for a client recently. I want to be mindful that I'm not sharing any information that, because everything's very confidential with my clients, but a client recently was described me in a sales conversation where someone was just asking them some questions about their offer and about their work, but it very much felt on their side like those were questions because they were like not trusting them, and it was almost like they were grilling them because they like didn't believe them, and that really had them feel like they needed to be on the defensive and like protective, and that can be a very reactive space, and it can be very activating in your system. So raise your hand if you've ever experienced that, if you know what I'm talking about. And I think just noticing how if that's the case, and there's almost this belief that people get onto calls and they don't necessarily want what you have, and when they have questions, that is that's like an attack on you, or that's them saying, I don't believe you. I think that's just a really interesting place to pause and just to get curious, like, why is that a story coming up for you? Is there an opportunity to shift that story? Is there even an opportunity to shift the understanding we have around why someone might be asking those questions? I have a podcast episode coming up. I think it's not for another month, but we're talking about this. I won't ruin the whole question and everything, but one of the things I shared on that is really taking this mindset and adopting this belief that when you're having a conversation with someone, when someone lands on your sales page, or when someone's in your sales process, taking the mindset that they want to be there. They're hoping that your solution is going to be the solution that helps them solve a problem, right? We have to think about what it's like for us on the buying, on the potential client side, when we're looking for a solution. I know when, sorry, there was something in the air there. I know when I'm looking to buy something new, I'm not looking to buy something new like, I don't trust all of these people. If I need to bring on a new team member, right? I'm not like, let me see how like I can find where they're lying to me and like question them. I'm thinking, who's gonna be the person who's gonna be a great fit for my team? Like, I hope each person I talk to is the person. I hope this person is a great fit. So if I'm asking questions, if I have an objection that's more in the form of a question, it's not because I'm grilling them. It's because I'm like, ooh, like, I hope this person is right. Here's just a question I have, or here's something I want to know. And if I did have an objection, it would still be coming from the place of, I hope this person is a fit, right? I hope this person is someone who can work with me. I wouldn't waste my time sharing my objection, having that conversation with a potential person for my team, unless it was someone I really thought could be a fit. And then that would be simply sharing my concern, what I needed to feel okay and safe, because I'm a human who's making a decision that feels like a leap, or that feels scary, or that feels, there's so many reasons that objections can come up. And so I think understanding that and taking that mindset and seeing, is there a belief or a story for you that if someone has an objection or if someone has a question, they're grilling you or they don't like you? And is that maybe because you also like feel like you can't say no to someone when something isn't a fit, or because you don't trust people? Again, no, there's no shame in any of this, but I think that can be very helpful to see maybe then that could be being projected onto potential clients. And instead thinking, what if we adopted this belief that people wouldn't be landing on your sales page, people wouldn't be booking a call with you, people wouldn't be in your sales process unless they were hoping you were going to be a fit, unless they were like, there was a part of them that wanted this. And so any objections, any question marks, any questions about your work, anything that feels like grilling is really because someone is interested enough to want to know more, and wanting to get that information so they can make that decision, so they can overcome that objection, right? We don't have those conversations if we're not wanting to overcome that objection, if we're not wanting to move forward. So hopefully that last one makes sense there. I think that can be such a shift, and it can help you even to shift the way you show up and have those conversations with people from the start, because it's such a different conversation. It's such a different way you might even write a sales post or write a sales email or write a sales page when it's coming from more of that place. Like, I really trust people in front of me to be empowered to make that decision, to vocalize if something isn't a fit, and that if they are vocalizing an objection or question, that it's really coming from a place of wanting to make that decision. It's such a more, I think, open, relaxed way to sell, as opposed to, I think, when we're coming from the other space, it can be very defensive, it can be very closed off, it can be very almost like protecting ourselves in all the different forms of marketing and sales. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Kind of to put a button on the original one there is just remembering if there is, if it feels like for you it's hard to speak up, or you feel like you have to be nice and you can't just tell someone, no, this isn't something you're interested in, just seeing how the more you can practice, I think one of the easiest ways to actually be able to navigate those objections is to practice seeing where you can advocate for yourself and practice speaking up more and being transparent in your own life outside of your business and outside of those sales conversations where you're on the selling side. The more you can practice and advocate for that, the more you're going to trust people are doing the same when they're on conversations with you, and the more you're really going to get that mirrored to you. So I find that can be it's kind of fun because it's almost like there's no sales hack here, no, like this is the script for how to navigate sales conversations, as much as here's your own mindset brain hack for how to advocate for yourself more, to feel safe holding those boundaries, safe speaking up. And the more you do that, the more you're going to trust people are doing the same with and for you. And the more those conversations are going to just feel so much cleaner, so to say. And the more you're going to be able to hear people and what they're actually telling you, so you can navigate those conversations in a way that really is facilitating, supporting someone to make that decision. And I think this is the piece we always want to come back to with sales. And the more you can come back to, our whole job is simply to facilitate a space, whether it's your sales page or your sales funnel or your sales email or your sales post or your sales conversation, where we're helping someone get clear on what is it they want. Do they want your offer? Yes or no? Is that the right fit for them? Yes or no? And then to empower, to encourage, to support them to get clear enough and to advocate for themselves enough to be able to make that clear decision. Yes, I want this. No, I don't want this. That really and truly is, I find, a service-based approach to sales that feels so much more, I think, empowering both sides. And I think it'll help you sell so much more because it also will feel great to have those conversations then. Okay, I think that wraps up everything. I'll give you a quick recap on those. But again, if you are watching this on the replay, if you do have questions, throw them at me. And don't forget, if you leave an emoji, if you say hi, we are giving away a free copy of Sell Out Without Feeling Like a Sellout. And we will give that on Thursday. But just a recap here, the two reasons objections might be having you feel stuck in your sales process. One, you have a similar objection and you haven't overcome that objection yourself, whether that is with your own offer, with your own business, or in your own buying experience when you're on the client side. And if so, want to take a look at that and see how can we work through that for ourselves with our own business, with our own buying experience, so that it's easier to have those conversations and to walk through those conversations with someone else. And let me know again, thoughts, questions, concerns there, anything that doesn't feel clear. The second one here is when it feels like it's challenging for you to speak your truth, you feel like you have to say yes to be nice, and it's not okay for you to say no without an excuse, and you don't necessarily feel okay advocating to speaking transparently outside of your business when offers are presented to you. And you might be projecting that onto people who have objections or have question marks. Just noticing if that is coming up for you, that might be a place objections are keeping you stuck. And then that third bonus reason there is if it feels like if we kind of have this belief that people are coming into the sales process where they're kind of grilling you and they're questioning you, noticing that can make objections feel really sticky and challenging and put you on the defensive. And to see how there we might want to shift some of that belief to people going through your sales process are there because they're hoping that you're going to be the solution. You're going to be the answer to their prayers, and seeing how you can shift that so you can start to hear objections more again as a normal, neutral part of your sales process in your business. All right, I hope this was helpful for you. Before I hop off, a reminder, we just announced this month's free masterclass. We do a free masterclass every month. It's technically the first week in May because of the way the weeks worked out. So I think we have 2 masterclasses in May, but we're calling it this month's masterclass. And it's the truth behind a 40K cash month. And I'm sharing 5 of the biggest business mistakes I made at the start of my business. So you don't have to make them. So you can make your own 5-figure months with ease. I talk a lot about building, growing, and scaling a profitable business. I've shared my income results, though I think my clients' income results are so much more important than mine. But it feels so important to say, well, I'm super, super proud of those results in my business and I celebrate the heck out of them. And I think there's been so much underneath that I want to share with you. I haven't been an overnight success. And there have been so many mistakes and ways I failed forward. I don't believe in failure. I think failure is an important ingredient to success, but there have been so many learning curves I've made that have helped me create those kind of results and that help me to support my clients on such a deep level. I think one of the reasons I'm able to help my clients really shortcut their pathway to success and to profit in their business is because I was just so willing to run at and make mistakes and to fail forward, so to say. So this month's masterclass is all about that. I'm going to give you the truth, a real look behind the scenes at a 40K cash month, and really unpacking what some of those lessons are and 5 of the biggest lessons I learned at the start, so that again, we can shortcut your pathway to making income on your terms. I don't know the link off the top of my head, so I will grab that link and drop it here afterwards. If you want to sign up for that, please do. I would love to have you. I love getting to do these. It is completely free, and I would love, love, love to have you. And then if you're like, I don't want to wait for the masterclass. I want your support. You want more support navigating objections and the mindset and the clarity piece, as well as the strategy and action piece with objections, but also your sales process. That is what I love to support clients with, so they can get book out wait lists, hit those epic results and income months in their business. We are announcing, I think, in a day or two. But I'm very excited. We are opening up another spot or 2, thanks to my beautiful team who has helped me create some more spaciousness in my calendar for May. So I will drop a link for that. We are very actively booking those 2 spots in, and my spots usually book pretty quickly. So I would encourage you to hop on a consultation sooner rather than later. If that's you, I would love, love, love to support you. And I'm just super excited to get to connect with some of you and to have a little more space in my calendar for that. So those are my announcements. I'll drop a link for both the masterclass and the one-on-one consultation. I hope this conversation was helpful for you. I hope this will help you to, again, see that those objections are super normal and neutral and just a normal part of your sales conversation, a normal part of business, not something to make you feel wrong or to think any part of your business is wrong. You do not need to go change your offers and your ideal clients and your business model, and will help you look at some other places within yourself and your own mindset to navigate to help you show up in your sales process a little differently. It almost always starts with us. And I think the beautiful thing is that work can support us outside of business as well, but it can make business and sales feel so much easier and so much less sticky. All right, love you all. Thank you for being here, and I will be back next week with another live for you.